when I finally got to sit down with some great mentors, Scott Sambucci, Dan Morris, two people I still work with to this day, and
Amazing.
had a profound impact on how I sell and how to really approach this as a craft. Because you're not selling, sales is the outcome. You're actually opening doors and solving problems for people. If you approach it that way, you're on your way. So that would be a huge lesson. Solve, don't sell. But adding to it, the reason that a process is a good thing, as ugly and as uncomfortable as it can feel, is because when something does inevitably go wrong, we can isolate the constraint. So let's say, I have a problem getting leads. Okay, cool. All right, we got leads fixed now. They're not converting. Okay, where are they not converting? Are they not showing up for calls? Are we saying certain things that don't work? What is the problem and where is the problem? So that's why we want to isolate as many pieces and parts as we can and have those codified.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is the Creative Collaboration Show with Chuck Anderson, and this is the show where we inspire you to look for creative ways to create partnerships and collaborations as a way to grow your business faster. So as a business owner and entrepreneur, you're probably always looking for those ways to grow your business. And one of the ways that we do that, obviously, is with sales. And whether you do all the sales yourself or you have a sales team or maybe a combination of both, as the business owner, as the entrepreneur, you are probably your best salesperson. Now, love it or hate it, sales is an inevitable part of the business. And we always like to bring in some experts and some great advice and strategies that can help you with that. So whether you do all the sales yourself or you have your team or some combination, you're really going to love this episode because I have sales training expert Steven Steers with me here today, who is someone I just met, but is definitely an expert in his field. So first of all, Steven, thank you for being on my show today.
Thank you for having me, Chuck. It was a pleasure to meet you just a few short weeks ago, and it is a pleasure to be speaking with you here again today. Thanks.
Well, I'm really excited, Steven, to dive into, this whole topic. So I think a great way to start this is, how about if you do your introduction? I probably didn't do it justice, right? It's like, sales, right? Yeah, it's a little bit vague.
Pretty much it.
So tell everybody a little bit more about your company and yourself and what the work is that you do.
I'm happy to. And again, thanks for having me on. So I'm Steven, and the nexus of my work is they don't teach you sales in school. They do not teach you how to be confident, and they don't teach you how to be out in the world and make a way for yourself, especially as a solo entrepreneur. But that's what I'm here for. So a little bit about the work I've done. I've been fortunate enough to work with a bit over 700 companies from 28 different countries, including Google, Nike, AGC Paris. I've worked with entrepreneurs from Entrepreneurs Organization and many others. And I'm super grateful that I get to do the work that I do. And I primarily do it because when I was coming up as a young salesperson, just didn't have the resource that I am. So I want to help people who don't have access to people who can help them avoid a lot of the knots on the head and the dings to your pocketbook, get past some of those things with some cool frameworks that might even be fun should we implement them the right way. So that's a little bit about what I do.
Well, sales is an inevitable part of business. I mean, we're always selling. Some people love it. Some people don't love it. And some people are really good at it. Some people struggle at it. And there's all of those things in between. And I love what you just said here about being the resource that you didn't get to have when you were first coming up. And that was so true for me as well. I remember my early days. I was indoctrinated very, very early by doing door-to-door sales in minus 40 winters, and my sales pitch was basically like, "It's freezing. Can I use your washroom, please?" Right. And you just make them feel sorry for you, right? Which is, not the best sales technique, but it was a door opener of a sort.
I get the door open. That's
right. You got to get the door open, right? Like that's 90% of the battle. And then, making them feel sorry for you. That's the other 10%. No, I know that's not what you teach.
No, I don't think so.
Tell us a little bit about your origin story. Like, how did it come to be? Like, you got into sales and then now, you're involved in helping people with their sales presentations. So how did this happen?
Do you want the short version or the entertaining version?
Let's go with I like entertaining. See, that's a loaded question. It's not short or long. It's short or entertaining. Let's go with entertaining. That sounds like great fuel for a podcast.
Indeed. So I'm from New York City, born and raised. I'm currently in Mexico City because arbitrage is real. So shout out to Mexico City for having me as well. And so I was in New York City and I was working in the construction business. My company would build high rises. So part of my job was to work in the field and make reports about all the components that we would install, file those reports. And if something was broken, we could get paid again. It works out very, very well. And then the other half was in the office. So I'd work directly with the project managers and I was kind of the infield representative. And I would work directly with the union that we worked with, which was Local 580 Iron Workers. Shout out to those guys as well. And on one of the days, I was working at the Baccarat Hotel, which is on 53rd Street and 6th Avenue. And I'd been involved in that building since it was a hole in the ground. And at this point, probably 3 or so years after that point, it was a fully built building, 45 stories tall in the middle of Manhattan. The penthouse was on sale for $75 million. And just to let you know how crazy that is, if I'm like 6'2", if I laid down and took up all the space that my body would take up square footage wise, the square footage added up to more than I was making in a year. So just let that bend.
Yeah, I have a visual.
Yeah. So I'm at this job site walking with my foreman, Kenny, and people already moved into some of these apartments, $20 million, $30 million, et cetera. Big, expensive, obnoxiously priced apartments. And so I just showed up in jeans, sneakers, and a hoodie to walk down and to every room that I could and fill out my report. We make it down from the top floor of the roof all the way down to the construction entrance. And Kenny and I are having a laugh. And he's like, all right, we should go to lunch. And he's like showing me pictures on his phone. And he taps me on the shoulder and is like, hey, let's go. And I take one step forward and a cement block falls directly where I was standing. I missed it like that, just barely. One step. I might not be here speaking with you today. And so as I'm sitting there like flabbergasted, confused and scared, Kenny says, and he's Panamanian, he's like, Papa, not everyone gets a chance like that. You're here for something. And I was like, huh. And so I lost my appetite. And then I just went on a really long walk around New York, just thinking about my life. And I came to the conclusion I was going to die. And if I was going to die, I should die doing something I wanted to do. And always the main thread, back in this time, podcasts were still kind of new. So I remember listening to Pat Flynn's Smart Passive Income podcast. And he's like working online. And I was like, I want to work online. Like, how do I do this? And I figured, well, I'm okay at talking with people. So maybe sales is the right thing that I should do. And quite frankly, you're probably not having many falling objects coming for your head if you're on a phone with talking to people. So I set about doing as much as I could to figure out how to get a job in sales. Went to networking events, met people, and eventually that led me to becoming an SDR, sales development representative at a startup in New York. And that was a very difficult job because the first day I showed up, the manager said, all right, welcome. Here's your list of companies. Get us some meetings. And I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, get us some meetings. Who do I talk to? What do I say? Figure it out. And again, that's not the way to welcome anybody into any company at all. But I was hungry and I was like, this is what I want to do. And so I just went for it. I learned some things, asked some questions, sought training and stuff. And that was somewhat of a short-lived experience. I think I was there for a bit over two years. And they got rid of a lot of people on the team. And one of the founders sent me an email after I got axed that was basically like, hey, yeah, you got the short end of the stick here with regards to territory management and vertical. Too little, too late for sure. But I hope that with your work ethic, you should be a great seller should you continue to do that with your life. And so, I was out of that role and that just gave me a lot of thinking. And I was like, what a terrible way to run a company. Like, stuff isn't going well. Why would you put people in that position? And just a quick aside here, people don't like sales for many reasons. And some of the reasons they don't like sales are one, that people don't do it well, that people are forceful, and that, quite frankly, salespeople aren't trained well. That's why they do it such a terrible way. So when I see founders that have built a company, maybe they've raised some money, and they look at stuff that's not working, and they just say, oh, yeah, somebody else has that. What are you doing? Someone's entrusted you with their professional career. You are a steward of their life as much as you are of anything else. So that's something worth paying attention to. So anyway, got the axe from that company. And then I was like, I know I'm good at this. I closed some big deals when I was there with no help, right? Just figuring it out. And I was like, what could I do if I had training? And so I sought out people and I got some good situations. And then that kind of landed me in a consulting role and running sales for a sales consulting company that worked with early stage startups. And kind of the rest is history from there. I put my nose to the grindstone. I listened, I practiced things, and I got better and better. And I was like, yeah, this is how it's supposed to be done. And that has been one of the defining moments in my career. And I wouldn't change a thing. But again, I didn't have that type of training and support, and I want to make sure others do so they don't have to deal with the BS and the soul searching that comes from entrusting people who don't hold up their end of the bargain.
Yeah. Wow. I'm so glad we went with the entertaining version of the story. Right? Because I think there was so many things that you said in there that are brilliant. I mean, who could relate to being thrown into a position or a job or a task or whatever with no instructions saying, here's your role, figure it out. Not many people can do that. And so I had a similar situation happen to me. So I can definitely relate to everything you're saying. And you did, right? It's sink or swim. You could have bailed and said, nah, this is not for me. But instead you figured it out and got some results. And even though it didn't last long, sometimes that's the universe's way of guiding us to the next step, right? And so
that's it. It always lines up in reverse.
Yeah. Right. When we look backwards, it's like, oh yeah, I'm doing this today because I did this, because I did this, because I did this. And, yeah, that would be a great episode one day. We'll just do the whole reverse engineering all of our, businesses and that's a whole other show. So what were some of the things that you learned? So you're thrown into this job and, now you've learned what it took to sell. You're training other people. So, what were some of the things that you learned and some of the takeaways from that experience that can help others that are, maybe mistreating their, and I don't mean like you're a bad person mistreating your employees, but if you're hiring a salesperson saying, go sell, yeah, you should probably have a little bit more in place. And, or if you're doing the sales yourself and it's not really working out, there might be some missing pieces there as well. So Stephen, what were some of those takeaways and that helped you succeed?
Yeah, this is a huge question. I think when I finally got to sit down with some great mentors, Scott Sambucci, Dan Morris, two people I still work with to this day. And
amazing.
Had a profound impact on how I sell and how to really approach this as a craft. Because you're not selling. Sales is the outcome. You're actually opening doors and solving problems for people. If you approach it that way, you're on your way. So that would be a huge lesson. Solve, don't sell. But adding to it, the reason that a process is a good thing, as ugly and as uncomfortable as it can feel, is because when something does inevitably go wrong, we can isolate the constraint. So let's say, I have a problem getting leads. Okay, cool. All right, we got leads fixed now. They're not converting. Okay, where are they not converting? Are they not showing up for calls? Are we saying certain things that don't work? What is the problem and where is the problem? So that's why we want to isolate as many pieces and parts as we can and have those codified. So now if you're a founder who's selling, you may have the gumption to potentially get out of founder-led sales and hire folks to sell. That's awesome. I think that's a laudable thing to want. But you can't hire someone in to just figure it out because you set terrible expectations for that person and for yourself and for your business. Now, again, some people will figure it out. They'll know what to do and they'll get it. But that still hasn't given you a system to hire someone in. So the way I would describe this is there's a difference between business development and sales. If you're hiring someone to figure it out, you're hiring someone to do business development. And I define business development as someone who figures out what people are buying, how they want to buy what you have to buy, and then commercializing that thing. And if we do that enough, then we can graduate that to sales. Sales is a system and a process that you get people into work because you know it works and they can just run with that to the bases and the races. So those would be some of the biggest learnings that I got when I was there and a whole bunch of others. But I think probably the button or the bow on the entire experience is if you want something, you're going to figure out how to do it. And I knew I wanted to have my own business, and I was willing to do whatever it took to do that. And no matter what support or lack of support I got, it's going to be here figuring it out. And that's what brings me to where we are today.
Yeah, amazing. I'm sure there's a lot of mistakes that business owners and entrepreneurs are making in their business, whether it be their own sales or be with their team. I think we've kind of touched a little bit on some of them already, but I like to just shine light on it because, like you said, selling is about solving problems, but it's also about overcoming mistakes as well, right? And so when you become aware of something, then you can do something to fix it. Because I hear this all the time, Stephen, where it's like, oh, I'm no good at selling, or my stuff isn't selling, or I need to create this new thing or whatever. And whenever I hear somebody saying they're creating a new thing, I'm like, well, what's wrong with the old thing? Right. So why did you, and so many times when I've unpacked that, it's that, well, there was an old thing that isn't selling really well. So then we get the shiny object, right? We start going towards a new thing, and then, oh, this thing is going to do better than that thing. But we haven't really solved the problems of that thing. And so we're just doomed to repeat the same cycle over and over and over again. And Absolutely. So I'm wondering if you could speak to that a little bit. And what are some of the mistakes that you're noticing when you work with companies and with founders on their sales? Like what are you noticing some of the mistakes are being made?
Absolutely. And I love how you mentioned that. My dad always says, remember, wherever you go, there you are. So just because you change the wrapping or the weather, you're still that person. And there's nothing wrong with that either. But I think we need to approach fresh places with fresh eyes as well. So I think one of the biggest mistakes for me, and I'm a big, big proponent of this, every founder and almost every salesperson, you should be recording your calls. Now, why is that? Especially on a founder side, you're wanting to improve enough to where you can get out of selling. You don't want to do it anymore. That's totally fine. But you can't just wing it and then hope somebody comes in and can wing it as well as you wing it, because no person you hire will ever care as much about your business as you do, unless you give them a piece of it, which is another conversation entirely. So when I say record your calls, this is a great thing so you can improve yourself, so that you can then hire someone in who knows how you talk to your customers, what questions you ask, and how much clarity you provide to them with direct examples that they can study to be prepared for their role. On the flip side of that, if you're welcoming someone into your company and you're taking the expense and time to hire someone, you want to make them feel accounted for and like they're going to stay at the company. Would you rather like, hey, figure it out, or hey, you're a great salesperson. I've built this series of processes that we've worked together to get here. Should you follow these and make them better? Here's how much money you can make, and here's what you'll do for the business. Take a look at this. Come back here with questions, and then you can kind of leverage that manual as a kind of course that helps them ramp up even faster than you might have thought. And if you do that, then you're all making money, everyone's happy, and then you have less problems in your business because you've accounted for what's happening. So I'd say that's probably one of the biggest things I see. People don't have a process, and then they hire someone and they hope knows a process, which 99% of the time just isn't the case, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. And I get why that happens. I mean, as I moved from solopreneur into more entrepreneur, into more like business owner who has a team, that challenge of, okay, well, we don't really have SOPs because most small businesses don't have SOPs or even know what SOPs are. And so like documenting your process, but if you yourself have not documented what you do to sell your product, how can you expect somebody else to come in and do that for you? Exactly. But it's kind of like what you said, it's the difference between sales and business development. You might very well be hiring someone to develop a sales process for you because maybe that's not your thing,
and that's okay.
Right. But call it what it is. Because if you hire the wrong thing, and do you see this as well? Like hiring the wrong thing, expecting the wrong result because, hey, this is not really sales. This is biz dev, or vice versa.
And I've been hired into roles where it's like, oh, you're going to do sales. And it's like, okay, cool. Doing my research on things. So who's our ideal customer? You know, all right. Why have people bought from us
People
in the
with
past?
money.
Yeah. Why have people bought from us in the past? Well, I'm not sure about that. Okay. What type of roles do you typically target to go do this work? I don't know. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's like, they're like, oh, where are the sales? Well, it's like, well, I got to figure out who the heck wants this thing and why they want it. That's going to take a little bit of time. I'm doing this work, but you don't know. So why would I know better than you, the founder? And I think that's just kind of, it's funny, but it's way more common than it needs to be. And that's going to keep me employed for a long time. So grateful for it.
Now, this being a podcast and a YouTube video, I can't see our audience, but I know that we have, different reactions. Ones that are like nodding, going, "Yep, absolutely rude," and there's the other ones that are going, "Oh my God, that's what I've been doing, right? Like that's what I need, or that's what the mistake I've been making." Because, look, sales is that inevitable thing, but as solopreneurs, and I don't like the term, but we're trying to move away from that, right? Like nobody really accomplishes anything significant on their own. There's always a team. There's always collaborators. Yep. There's always more people involved. You might even think of your clients or your customers as collaborators as well. So we never really accomplish anything alone. There's always more. But the chronic do-it-yourselfer who's trying to move away. Yep. This was me. The chronic do-it-yourselfer who is trying to move away from doing everything themselves and then pass that on to someone else. And, I remember very clearly the first time I was doing that. It's like, okay, I'd hire someone and then I wouldn't know. Okay, great. You're hired. Here we are. And it's like, I'm not prepared. It's like, what do I tell them to do? And how do I train them and all of this thing? And you realize, oh no, like I need almost another week or two just to figure that out. And here they are sitting here ready to work. So, is that kind of like the situation you find yourself walking into when you're working with clients?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, it's a spectrum, right? Some people have parts figured out. Some people don't have parts figured out. But I generally say the place that I jump in and check for is the sales call. If I listen to your sales call, I can tell a ton about your business. How are you setting? Like, why is your sales cycle longer than it needs to be? Why are you not converting as many deals as you can? Do you have a proper process that you could give to someone with the right questions? That's like one of the first scabs to peel and be like, that's a problem. So that's one of the places I usually check. The other side of this is it's a mentality. So I love a shiny object. I love a shiny object. Like they're amazing. They're so good, but
because they're shiny.
They're so shiny and they move.
I know.
Like oh man, they shift shape and everything. It takes it. There's many reasons why entrepreneurship is hard. There's a quote I want to share actually, or many quotes. I love quotes, but I've become friendly with one of the founders of Starbucks. His name is Zev Siegel, and he advises early stage startups. And he says, entrepreneurs usually start a business because they're good at something. That something isn't usually business. And I just love that because we think that we have this game-changing way to change the way people do business or do something. And that's awesome. That's laudable. Like you're insane to think that what you have is something that people will want. And I support that entirely. And that's good. Like we need more people who have that mentality. But there is a method to this madness. And I've been victim to it as well. But as I've learned across the years, time will teach you many lessons. It's super important to get out of your own way and to have the mentality of, I need to learn things from people who know better than me. That's been one of the game changers in my entire life and career always. But sometimes you're like, no, I'll figure this out on my own. And sometimes you can. But the other quote I like is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together, which speaks to collaboration and its importance as well.
Building upon what you just said, I think this is the perfect time to kind of, tie in the theme of our show, which is collaboration, because you just said it right there. I mean, and we've been kind of talking about this. We don't really accomplish anything significant on our own. One of the reasons, though, I wanted to have you on the show is because, one of the things that we use these episodes for is to help people find people to collaborate with. And, because of your experience and everything, I think you're someone who's great to collaborate with, especially on either the sales training side or even the sales process development side. And we've talked about those two things. So couple of questions. One is, how has partnerships and collaborations played a role in the growth of your business?
Dude, this is a really heavy one for me in so many ways. So the first thing I'd say is, once you realize that you can't do it on your own, there are people who are really good at the things you're not good at and just want to do them. Mm-hmm. What a load off. And again, I'm still working through certain portions of this in my stage in business, but it's like, oh, I can just have that done. Like, what does that free up for you? So I say for any task, there's probably like 3 or 4 different levels of it. There's this task needs to be done. There's the mental anguish of doing it. And then there's getting it done that's well enough to have it go out. You can outsource all of that to someone who's way better at it. And then you have brain power to do what you're best at. Mm-hmm. So there's a book, I think it's the 80-20 of sales and marketing by a guy named Perry Marshall. And he breaks out $10, $100, $1,000, and $10,000 an hour tasks and what you should be concentrating on as an entrepreneur. And obviously, you should be spending most of your time, as much time as possible, on the $10,000 an hour tasks. So if you did a task audit for all the things that you do in your business or don't do in your business, you're probably on the $10 and $100 hour tasks more than you're anywhere else. And just frankly, you're not going to grow. So if you want to grow, if you want to get out of your own way and build something that you're really proud of, it's going to take getting people in who are better at you than the things you think are shiny objects that you should learn. And again, there's a spectrum in that as well, but it needs to start with your mindset of, you know what, there's somebody who's better at this than I am, and recognizing how to find those people. And collaboration, like the groups we're in, you can find really good people who come highly recommended. And then there's also that not only social proof, but that social, I don't want to say pressure, but they're incentivized to do well by you because of all the other people around who are also watching and seeing what's going on, which I think is a good investment for everyone.
Yeah. Well, I love what you just said there, because it really ties in nicely to the follow-up question to this, which is, when you decide that, okay, I'm not going to do this piece, I'm looking for someone to collaborate with, partner with, hire, whatever it is, what is your go-to source for those types of collaborations or partnerships? And, what do you look for in a collaborator?
Yeah, this is another great question. My answer is going to be, it depends on what I'm collaborating on. But I would say I look into the groups that I've paid to get into first. So similar like a JVMM, or another one I love is the Dynamite Circle, because these groups contain experts. They contain really good people who most of the time will just give you time to know about what your problem is and even give you great suggestions on how to go forward with it. And then if you wanted to work with them, it's available. So they're not selling you, like they're not pitching you on anything. They're just more like, hey, like, have you thought about doing these things? And that speaks more to kind of what you and I, Chuck, were talking about before we started to record. It's, I lead with relationship first. Like, I don't want to work with anybody tomorrow, today, or any point in the future who I wouldn't want to work with for the rest of my life. So I think it's massively important to start any relationship with that in mind, to say, yeah, I could see myself working with you. We have similar values because we're in similar groups, and other people I know and trust you. You're worth learning more about. So I'd start with the questions. I think that's important. Get some clear answers, and then a person will help you develop some type of plan. And if that plan's a good thing, then you're off to the races. But I'd say start with people you know. Networks are robust and helpful.
Love it. Very, and that's where you and I met. And here we are on a podcast, and who knows what else that we'll come up with to do in the future, right? But I think, for me, I just need to know that I like the other person first. And, you're right. We did talk about this. It's more about relationship, where so many people make it transactional. It's like, oh, you do this thing for me, and if you do it well, then I will like you. And that's, to me, that is really setting up for disaster. It's like, it's a love-hate thing, and that is going to be painful long term, right? So, but when we come together, we already like each other. It's like, hey, we get along. And I do this and you do that, and that seems to go well together. What if we do this thing together? Then I think that makes sense, right? And
it's a fruitful partnership.
Absolutely. And long term, then you're not always looking for the next thing, or the next person who can do that. And we're not just using and abusing people and leaving them, looking for others. And so, it's hard enough to get the good relationships without, doing that. But, the point in all of this is that we want people to look beyond what they can do themselves and start to look for people who they can collaborate with to solve problems in their business. So we've been talking a lot about sales today. You can definitely help solve the sales problem, whether it's a biz dev problem or it's an actual sales training problem. Well, and I think calling it the right thing is important because so many people say sales, 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 but that's like a really big word when you really break it down. And that's what I love about what you do, Stephen, is because you take a look to see, okay, what systems do you have in place? What presentations do you have in place? Are we even there, or are we more on a process development path versus a training path? And so I think that's really, really important because you can't just start throwing sales presentations on top of stuff that doesn't work.
Definitely not. If you want to do well, that is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if you want to do well.
So this has been incredible. And of course, we want to recommend you as someone to collaborate with, especially for anyone listening in here right now, where you might be going through some challenges with sales or even letting go of that and hiring people and delegating. Like there's all sorts of different scenarios. Reach out to Stephen. All his contact info is there beneath the video. If you're watching this on video, it's there in the show notes. If you are listening to this on a podcast, highly recommend that you reach out to him. And so, Stephen, I know you had a free gift for everybody as well. I just wanted to ask you to share what that is, and we'll make sure that those links are here as well.
Yeah, awesome. Again, thank you so much for having me, Chuck. The gift I have for everybody is what I call my presentation planning cheat sheet. If you're going to speak in public, you're doing a sales presentation, make it relatable and make it worth people's time. And this sheet that you can download teaches you how to break down every single part of what you're doing in as little as 25 minutes so that when you present to people, you're giving them something that helps them tell their own story better.
Amazing. Well, I highly recommend that everybody goes and gets that. The link is there beneath the video. It's in the show notes there as well. Do go ahead and get that free gift. And, just before we sign off, I asked this of all my guests because so much of this has been about learning, the growing in business, and our businesses don't grow beyond the extent that we grow ourselves. And you mentioned one book already, but I want to ask you, like, if you had a recommendation for a must-read book that all business owners, all entrepreneurs should read, is 80-20 Rule, is that your go-to book, or do you have another one that you would definitely recommend?
That's a great book, but there's 4 books I read every year, and I'm going to suggest one of these. I read it every Q1 and maybe sometimes a second time in a year, and it's the Almanack of Naval Ravikant. He is a investor. I believe he started Angels List. He's built many companies, a very wealthy guy. And there's no fat in this book. It talks about building businesses, building wealth, making connections with people, having sustainable relationships. It's the most highlighted book I've ever read, dog-eared pages if you like. And every time I reread it, I find something new in it that I can take and use in my life every time. So I think without a doubt, that's one of the best books I've ever read. And I think every entrepreneur or human, for that matter, can gain a lot of wisdom and insight for how to live a better, more fulfilled life, whether you choose to have your own business or have a great family or whatever your thing is. It really helps you get on center with a thesis around that. So the Almanack of Naval Ravikant, available for free on the website as well.
Oh, amazing. Well, not only have I not read it, I've never heard of it. And I always find but you sold it so well that now that has to be the next one that I go and read. So I'm definitely going to take you up on that recommendation. And what I find fascinating about this question, thank you for answering it so well, is that everyone kind of has their own go-to that they really, really love. And we're kind of building a list, a bit of a library actually, where one day we're going to take all the video clips of this and we're going to say, like, Stephen recommends this book and here's why. And so thank you for playing and recommending such I'm fascinated right now. I'm going to have to go check that out immediately. So thank you. Yes. Definitely. Well, we'll definitely be talking again, Stephen. This has been wonderful. I feel like I've got to know a lot more about, not only what you do, but how you do it and what your approach is. And it just seems to make so much sense to me. So,
thank you.
And so, and I can't wait to recommend you to our family and our community as well. So thank you so much for being an amazing guest on the show. And for everyone listening in, do grab Stephen's gift and reach out to Stephen. All the contacts are there. And so he's is going to be a great person for you to collaborate with. And I look forward to doing more with you as well. So so with that, we've come to the end of the episode, Stephen. So sad, but also joyous as well, because that just gives us an opportunity to book another meeting in another time. If you were to leave our audience with just one final piece of advice or words of wisdom, what would you tell them?
Overcome less.
Overcome less.
Yeah.
Wow. I might have to ponder that for the rest of the day. So yes. That's fascinating. So those are great words to end this episode by. And now that we've blown everyone's minds, so thank you, Stephen. Thank you to our audience. Again, make sure that this time spent has been time well spent and hasn't been for nothing. Pick one action item that you can take action on today because you listened to this episode. Maybe it's reaching out to Stephen. Maybe it's getting his free gift. Maybe it's something else that you wrote down in your notes. Do that thing today. Keep moving forward in your pursuit of your big dreams and your business growth goals and bringing that big idea to the world that's going to help all of us. And thank you so much for that. In the meantime, this has been Chuck Anderson with the Creative Collaboration Show. My guest has been Stephen Steers, and we'll see you on the next one, everybody.
See ya. Like and comment and subscribe to the channels as well.
Great advice.